We have some wedding drama that apparently involves the Waffle House, so this will be fun and interesting. This story came February 12th, 2020. Have you ever been to a Waffle House? I don't think I have. It's in the States, I believe. I don't think I've been there. Is it as good as they say? I mean, the Jonas Brothers wrote a song about it, so I'm assuming it's good. Ages ago, I was dating a woman who had a large family that she generally kept away from me. I didn't have any idea what they were like until we all traveled from the Northeast to Virginia for a wedding. The person getting married was a cousin of the woman I was dating. The plan was to drive down to Virginia on a Friday morning and drive back on Sunday night. I was going to drive us down, but her father insisted that we ride with him. After all, he had a large, comfortable SUV and we could relax in the back seat for the ride. Against my better judgment, I agreed and we drove down with him. I don't know why. I just feel like this is gonna be insane. The way he's building it up is like the family just has to be totally crazy. We had a couple of months notice about this wedding. I had made it clear that I needed to be back by 9 a.m. that Monday because of work responsibilities that I could not offload on other people. I confirmed with the woman I was dating a couple of times a week for 2 months that she had communicated this to her father and he was all right with leaving Sunday night and not Monday night. The morning of the trip, we drove to her father's house. His big, comfortable SUV sat in the driveway while his hatchback commuter car sat idling in the street in front of the house. I bit my tongue as he and his son-in-law loaded everything into the hatchback, and I stared blankly as we were directed to get in the back. The car was so crammed that my feet were on a bag on the floor with my knees up to chest level. Still, I was polite. I said nothing. The woman I was dating and I exchanged quiet glances several times as we made it to the highway. How long was that drive? Oh no. About 10 miles into the trip on a major highway near New York City, her father starts talking about our expected return Monday night. I looked at the woman I was dating, who refused to look at me. Then I chimed in, stating that I had to be back for work at 9 a.m. on Monday, that I had checked with her multiple times each week for 2 months to make sure that she communicated it. Her father was surprised. He had no idea. She had been fibbing about talking to him about it. As we drove, I began considering my options. As I was asking to be let off at the next gas station where I could catch a cab and return home since my needs were not compatible with the plans this woman and her father had apparently agreed to, he reluctantly agreed to return Sunday night. On the way down to Virginia, her father and his son-in-law shared the driving. On the interstate highway, this involved driving at 45 miles per hour in the fast lane. They would ultimately somehow get lost, bringing us to Philadelphia, then DC, then somehow West Virginia, before we ultimately arrived in whatever town in Eastern Virginia we were headed to. It was 7 a.m. and her father had arranged for everyone to go to the Waffle House, a franchise I heard of and seen but never visited before that day. 21 hours folded into the back of a 2-door hatchback with your knees pressed to your chest is a physically challenging thing to endure. 21 hours? You would physically be in pain though. We had stopped twice for gas, at which point we spent a few minutes outside the car, but otherwise we were crammed in there. I was surprised at how many people had shown up. Her family effectively filled this Waffle House. The woman I was dating and I sat at a small table with one of her cousins and the man that she was dating. I had met this man once before in passing, Dave. I took one look at him that morning and realized he had been through a similar ordeal. He quietly told me that they had left on Thursday morning. His girlfriend's father, an uncle to the woman I was dating, drove them from Connecticut through Pennsylvania to Ohio to get to Eastern Virginia. They had spent Thursday night in a motel in Pittsburgh to get from Western Connecticut to Eastern Virginia. The Waffle House was staffed by 2 women, a mattress. Pardon? a waitress, and her daughter who worked the griddle. The waitress started at the far end of the restaurant, taking orders and delivering food, and slowly worked her way to our end. We walked into the Waffle House at 7 a.m. on Saturday morning. Dave and I were the last two who got to place an order. At this point, we had been there for about an hour. We ordered some sort of meal that had grits, toast, eggs, and coffee. We both asked to hold the grits, for eggs over easy, and for black coffee. As we waited to be fed, it became clear that the rest of the larger group was getting ready to leave. The group, let's say that there were 30 people, which is probably a conservative estimate, slowly over the course of maybe 15 minutes began standing, stretching, getting their acts together. When our food was finally brought to us, we saw that the women working the griddle had supplemented our meals with a dozen additional eggs over easy to make up for asking for no grits. Dave and I were both shocked as a platter of eggs was placed on the table between us. Well, at least you're getting your protein. We looked at each other somewhat stoically. We had sat there patiently waiting to order while everyone else was served. After 21 hours in the back of that car with nothing to eat aside from a granola bar, I looked at the crowd who were now all staring at me and realized that they were expecting us to stand up and leave despite having just been served. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I began enjoying my breakfast. So did Dave. We took our time eating. We chatted about TV shows while we ate, we asked for more coffee, and the two of us ate every last morsel of food. I have no idea how I ate a total of 8 eggs over easy, but I did. I even ate those hash browns that I don't normally touch. The group watching us continued to watch for the most part. 1 or 2 cars of people left, but there were 4 cars worth of people who walked out with us. That weekend was truly bizarre. Everyone was staying at an aunt's house. This meant that some people pitched tents in the backyard. I had been under the impression that we would be staying at a hotel. Turns out that wasn't true either. Dave and I were effectively ostracized. The large group of family members there would not speak more than a few words to us, with the exception of the aunt who owned the house and our girlfriends. Dave and I were given throw pillows and blankets and wound up having to sleep on the slate floor near the door because there was literally no other place. I feel like I'd rather sleep in the car and get my privacy at that point. Ooh, a hatchback? Never mind. Hell, just sleep at the Waffle House. We slept for a few hours before everyone started getting up to go to the reception. Dave and I wore suits. Our girlfriends wore nice dresses. There was some issues with the cars, so we called a cab for the 4 of us to go to the reception. The reception started immediately. About half the people there were dressed as if they were going shopping at a mall. Within 30 minutes, dozens of people were drunk and the party descended into chaos. During this party, we watched as some of the aunts got so drunk that they stood on the balconies sobbing uncontrollably. We watched some of the uncles and many of the male cousins stripped down to undershirts or bare chests on the dance floor. We watched as the father of the woman I was dating was prancing around the dance floor, waving his shirt over his head with his pants dropping beneath his ass. We watched someone lean too far back in a chair and fall over backwards into a large mirror affixed to a wall, cracking it. And we watched as basically no one reacted to that. This wedding reception had decayed into a nightmare party. I looked over at the bride multiple times throughout the night. She sat at the head table alone with her new husband. They were stone cold sober. She watched with a slackened jaw as her wedding reception fell into chaos. I observed from the other side of the room. We sat at a table for a couple of hours, and in that time, I saw no one even approach the bride or groom. Eventually, the situation there became too much, and the 4 of us skipped out. We went to a nearby hotel for the night, with the reception slated to end around 10 p.m. and us leaving around 7 p.m. I felt bad for the bride and groom for however the situation would escalate after we left. Around 11:30 p.m., phones start ringing. The bride was calling our girlfriends looking for help, so we went back to the venue. The place was a mess. The party had winded down and just about everyone there was in no condition to drive. The bride had asked us to help shuttle people to the aunt's house. My thought was, leave them where they are, seeing some people just flat out passed out, but we started shuttling people. Some people who could barely walk opted to drive themselves, and I saw the people who worked at the venue pick up the phone as they observed this to call in the drunk drivers. After spending a while helping a bride shuttle drunk family members home on her wedding night, I returned alone to my hotel room and I went to sleep. That was probably the best sleep of your life though after the last few days. Meeting up with Dave the following day, Sunday, he was talking about how he had to be at work the following day and how he didn't know how he was going to get back yet, since the driver he came down with had 20 minutes throwing up all over the inside of his own car the night before. No. My girlfriend called me around noon or so to report that everyone was already drinking again and things were getting out of hand at the aunt's house and that we would not be driving back that night. Dave and I rented a car and drove home, leaving before 2 p.m. The trip back took maybe 6 hours. So that 21-hour drive was because of all those other stops? Oh man. We did not get lost and wind up in DC, Philadelphia, Ohio, or West Virginia. The trip home was smooth and uneventful. I spoke to that girlfriend upon her return. She told me about how the family hated Dave and I because we are selfish and only think about ourselves, for not getting up without eating at the Waffle House, and for needing to be back to work that Monday. Dave was accused of throwing up all over the inside of the uncle's car because Dave can't handle alcohol. Dave doesn't drink though. It's just not his thing, but I guess it was important for the uncle to blame someone else for his own vomit. We were both also considered very rude for sleeping on the slate floor for 4 hours. It was suggested that we should have slept on the porch or driveway, although the aunt who owned the house argued against that. This is insane. Insane. Imagine those being your in-laws. We were blamed for the damage to the floor at the venue and the broken mirror. Something had happened with the cake after we had left, and we were blamed for that too. I never spoke to that girlfriend again after that. The experience was so ridiculous and embarrassing that we agreed during the call to break up. She kept apologizing to me about everything. Dave and I kept in touch for a while. He too broke it off with his girlfriend after that weekend. He wound up meeting someone nice and getting married a year later. There's a lot more that happened with this family after these events, but this is already super long, so I'll save that for another time. We have that other time, don't you worry. Let's see what the people of Reddit are saying, because I'm flabbergasted right now. Someone commented and said, yeah, I'm gonna need the rest of those stories with that family. I second that. Next comment, you are a far better person than I would have never gotten in that hatchback to begin with. Yeah, I think that's where I would have been like, I'm actually gonna drive us down myself. That's what I would have done, you know? I thought we were taking SUV, no problem. I'll drive us. We'll meet you there. Next comment. I like to think that you and Dave became great friends and you were his best man at his wedding. OP said, we've remained friends. We have not spoken recently, but after writing this, I called him up. We're getting together next week for dinner. Okay, this is fun. Well, hey, you made a friend out of this entire experience. It's a positive ending. Before we get to the more stories about this cuckoo bonkers family, we're gonna drink some water. It's hydration station. Cheers. I don't know why I'm holding this cup like a toddler when they like drink with two hands. We are finally being blessed with some warm weather here in Toronto. It is like in the 60s Fahrenheit right now and the sun is shining. That means me and Lila girl are going for a dub. I can't say the word or she'll freak out, so we just say W. We call it the dub. She hasn't clued in yet, but anyways, let me know what the temperature is for you guys. I'm hoping this stays, but usually it doesn't for us over here. Usually it blesses us with a lot of warm weather and then it's like, psych, big snowfall. We usually get one in March still, but I'm gonna enjoy it while it's here. All right, so he wrote again the next day, February 13th, 2020. In my last post, I alluded to there being more to the story. A number of people asked for it, so I'm taking the time today to provide the follow-up. Thank you, sir. Thank you for doing the Lord's work here. Some crucial context to this and the previous story is that the woman I was dating, Sarah, fake names, her parents were divorced and her father remarried. Sarah lived with her mother, who was a corporate lawyer, because the housing market here is so crazy that a lot of people over the last 30 years have lived with parents well into adulthood because it's so difficult to afford a home and so difficult to find an apartment. I met both Lynn and Sarah through Tiger Woods. In quotations, not the real Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods was one of the best golfers in the county. I had met him on the course when he was kind enough to stop and give me some pointers with my swing. I was dealing with a bad back injury at the time and he really helped me. We became good friends and still golf together regularly today, something like 20 years later. Sarah's mother, Lynn, had warned me about the family many times and she provided me with advice on how to deal with them. Oh, so your girlfriend, Sarah, her mom is Lynn. Lynn was dating what you call Tiger Woods, and he had warned you about the family. Should have taken that warning a little bit seriously. When she and Sarah's father were divorced, the family threw a party and pronounced Lynn dead. Sometime after we broke up, I changed jobs and quickly learned that Lynn was also employed there in a different group. Lynn and I always got along great. We got into the habit of having lunch together and along with two other people who we both knew who were also working there. After a few months, Lynn announced that she was engaged. We had a cake for her. She had been dating the same man for some time and they decided to tie the knot. Her wedding planning went fairly smoothly as far as I could tell as an outsider. Let's call Sarah's father, who we know from the previous story, King Kong, because that's easier to type. Plus, he thought he was King Kong and was worshipped as one by his family. King Kong and Lynn lived several villages away, maybe about 30-minute drive or so, depending on traffic, and never crossed paths. Plus, with Lynn being dead to them, there really shouldn't be a reason why King Kong would go out of his way to cross Lynn's path since she was pronounced dead. People don't visit cemeteries often, but they do drive past them, and I suppose that is what happened here. King Kong found out about Lynn's upcoming wedding. It was odd to me that the letter would arrive 3 or 4 days after she hosted a gathering for her people at her house. There were balloons tied to her mailbox, and I think everyone there were bridesmaids and female members of the family. I saw it because I picked up her partner, Tiger Woods, to grab lunch, hit the driving range and whatnot to get him away while they all discussed wedding dress options. 3 or 4 days to me is about the amount of time it took for a letter to make it from King Kong's village to Lynn's village, given one of those days was a Sunday. When I heard about the letter, I immediately imagined King Kong sitting parked in his car with binoculars spying on Lynn that day. The letter arrived in a red envelope with no return address. More specifically, the red envelope was an ordinary white envelope that had been colored in red with a red highlighter or marker. How long did that take? The letter was written in black ink on a sheet of printer paper. The paper was heavily indented as if substantial force was used in writing it. The letter, which was unsigned, was basically one big long attack on Lynn, calling her every name in the book, calling her a bad wife and a bad mother, and how dare she think about getting married to someone when she already made her sacred vow. You'll get what's coming to you is how the letter ended. Okay, so Sarah's dad is, well, we already know this. We already know. There was a lot of discussion about who the letter might have come from. King Kong was the obvious guess, but it could have plausibly come from anyone in that family. They were a family with substantial codependence and boundary problems, and they seemed to have the emotional development of children based on what I had been exposed to. The letter hung heavily on Tiger Woods' head, so much so that he stopped golfing, stopped going out on weekends when he could avoid it, and stayed at home for fear that the nutjob family of Lynn's ex would do something to their home. Yeah, get a few drinks in them and you never know. Then the first foot fell. Sarah, who I had not seen or spoken to since the Virginia wedding, told her mother that she would not be going to the wedding. She cited the problems it was causing with her father and his family, and apparently the situation there had decayed to the point where Sarah's stepmother and father were attempting to have Sarah declared incompetent to gain stronger control over her. This is so bizarre. I don't even know what to say. This was about the time that Lynn stopped talking about her wedding at work. Weeks passed and I had not heard from Tiger Woods. By the time the wedding came along, I was dating a woman who was a chef and who owned a venue that people would hire to host weddings, parties, and other such events. She came with me to this wedding. I can't believe it's so ironic that you went to Sarah's mom's wedding. Anyways, Lynn and Tiger Woods were going to have a quick ceremony at the venue, which hosted their reception. We arrived on time and had missed everything, but I got all of the gossip. King Kong showed up to the venue close to 2 hours before Lynn, who arrived extra early with her bridal party to get ready in the bridal suite. King Kong showed up drunk. The valet wasn't even on duty at this point. He had left his car running, the same hatchback we drove to Virginia in the parking lot, and made such a show stumbling up the steps into the reception hall that 2 of the people who worked there noticed and stopped him. Inside the lobby, he was shouting for Lynn and only got louder when he saw people he somehow knew were in the wedding party. He started getting physical, which resulted in some men who worked there and a groomsman having to restrain him as best as they could. King Kong was not a big man though. He was a small man who was wiry and he managed to put up quite a fight. But they managed to get him out the door and into the parking lot where he was soon arrested. King Kong had written the letter. According to what I heard, he admitted to the police that he would sit in his car down the road a bit and watch Lynn's home. And he did so to, quote, to protect my daughter, even though she didn't live there or anywhere near there. I like to think about King Kong's wife going to the police station to bail him out because he was violent, drunk, and uninvited at his ex-wife's wedding, who he had been essentially stalking. Yeah, he's clearly not over her. So, I know what you're all thinking. What happened to his car? Someone had said that King Kong had left it running in the parking lot with the door open, and when the police took him away, they did him the solid of locking the doors and closing them so that no one would get into it and steal anything. They did not say that they turned the car off. Just drain his battery. Wow. So we got kind of 2 double whammy wedding stories in one. And the Waffle House, I guess. So bizarre. Let's see what people are saying now. So someone asked, wait, so is Tiger Woods Lynn's husband now? OP said yes. I caught on to that, but in case you guys didn't. Next comment, how old is Sarah during this time? I was picturing mid-20s or something, since in your last post you mentioned working on Monday and being responsible. But with King and Queen Kong trying to have her ruled incompetent, I wonder if she's younger. OP wrote, this was right after the dot-com crash. I don't remember what year exactly, but during the few years after, it was where a lot of people in that area were out of work and there were effectively no jobs. I don't remember how old she was at the time. She was a few years younger than me, but she was definitely in her late 20s. There's a lot of context I didn't bother including there, but her stepmother had attained an associate's degree from the community college in psychology and made a lot of contacts through the classes she attended and work she had done. There was one man in particular who she and King Kong had become close with. He looked something like Mr. Peanut with black hair. Literally the kind of guy who looks like he should wear a monocle and would be plotting against people in some poor scripted 80s popcorn film. I saw him once from a distance. I remember Sarah's stepfather, Tiger Woods, at one point saying that the stepmother and Mr. Peanut were going after Sarah under the guise of, the reason you can't find a job is because you have problems. Mr. Peanut then decided, after talking with Sarah for a few minutes, that she had a personality disorder. I don't know that I ever observed anything with Sarah that would make me believe that. They then tried manipulating her to bring her into the fold since she had stopped attending a lot of family functions following the Virginia thing. By the time this happened, it was still a long time before the wedding, but after she had moved out of her mother's house into an illegal off-the-books apartment owned by the father's friend. At one point during this, someone had passed away and she had inherited a little money, a few thousand, if that, and the father, the stepmother, and Mr. Peanut ramped things up quite a bit. I had heard that it got to the point where there was some deposition, and by that time, her father was bad-mouthing her to her landlord, falsely accusing his own daughter of prostitution. Nuts. These people are nuts. She moved. She might actually have moved even before her mother's wedding. I'm not sure. Anyway, she moved out to the greater Chicago area to stay with a college friend, almost immediately found a job, and I presume is still there. Well, hey, thanks for giving us an update on poor Sarah. What? This was probably one of the craziest stories I've ever read in terms of just like bizarre. That's the only word I can think of is bizarre. Have you ever dated someone with such a wild family? I haven't. Actually, I've liked all the families of the people I've dated, to be honest. So I've liked their families more than I've liked them. Anyways, let me know your thoughts, you guys. This was wild. And also, have you been to Waffle House? Is it good? Now I really want to go. I want a waffle. Anyways, let me know your thoughts and feelings. I'll see you tomorrow. Stay classy out there. Stay sassy.